because I don't know that it came from me, is when Headful of Lice says, this is supposed to be the greatest country in the world. Imagine what it could have been if Canada had done right by us. And Canada can still do right by us. However, just as an example, as Indigenous people, we're asked to trust. Trust us. Why don't you trust us? And then people go, okay, I'll trust you. Again, there's a lot of Indigenous people who won't, but okay. So the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal issued an order against the government of Canada for child welfare apprehensions. They gave the max, which was $40,000 per child, which came out to be about $2 billion, right? The government had until October 6th to decide whether they were going to appeal that order or whether they were going to abide by it. What do you think they did?
Appeal.
They appealed. So, when she talks about reconciliation, and we're told as Indigenous people, yes, reconciliation. And then when somebody's like, okay, we got to get the checkbook out. Whoa, 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 whoa. Reconciliation is like this much. It's not this much. And I don't know. I still, even despite that, I'm still hopeful because I have to be. But that's just my nature as a person, as a human being, right? Because to be cyclical is not the way to be. Yeah.
And you used the word that came up in the play, however. You remember?
However. Yeah.
We'll take one last question.
Just curious about her character's name is Headful of Lice. She wasn't presumably born with lice. So at what point in her life would her name have changed to that without have happened?
The question is, how did Headful of Lice get the name Headful of Lice?
Just immediately itch.
Or at what point in
She
her
would
life
have
did
had a
she?
different name when she was born, and then at some point when she developed the lice problem.
It's a good question.
The interesting thing is that we've never actually talked about Agatu and Headful of Lice as human beings. They've always been kind of like otherworldly beings, and we've talked about it as if this is just another life that they're living. They've just kind of shown up at this point. And so I've never really thought about the origin because we talk about how many different lives they've lived. And my Headful of Lice is really struggling in this one. And Agatu's like, you have to start listening. And I'm like, no! So I'm not too sure when I got the lice.
Also, the name, where the name comes from. Revealing all my secrets tonight. Where the name comes from is, you've all heard the word Eskimo, right? There's actually a sports team in Canada named the Eskimos. That's a pejorative. It came from Indigenous people because we didn't get along with the Inuit. We still kind of don't, which I've always found curious. So our insult about them, what we called them, were the Eskimo, the raw meat eaters, which is really what it meant, right? Which to Indigenous people was disgusting. It was like, ooh, gross. The Inuit had an insult for us, which was Headful of Lice. So
Headful of lice.
that's where the name came from, but it also was something when I was younger, it was something that was said about Indigenous kids. It was like, oh, you probably got lice and blah, blah, blah.
Said about
It
white
was
kids
one of
too,
those,
got
it was
cooties,
so it kind of was supposed to ring both ways a little bit, but that's where the name comes from.
The word Chippewayan is like that too.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Chippewayan is actually, again, like an Indigenous insult because the Cree would look at the Dene and be like, look, they can't even, the way that they tan their hides is so everything's pointed. They can't round it, so that it was just the people with the pointed hoods. So call them Dene.
Nice. Yeah.
Well, we have to wrap it up, unfortunately. We could honestly sit here forever. night.